everybody. Welcome to another episode of Hawk Blogger Mornings. I am Brian Nemhauser. You can find me on Twitter, Instagram, TikTok, and YouTube, and all the other places at Hawk Blogger. And it is a Tuesday? What's today? Today's Wednesday. Yeah, it's Wednesday. Oh my God, I've lost track already. The days are turning into nights and back into days. It was a very early morning here at the NFL Combine in Indianapolis. Hopefully, I'll do a double sound check. As you can tell, I have rearranged for all of you. I've taken the feedback. I've listened. You didn't like having the Cardinals logo in the background, so I flipped it around. So now you're seeing the back of the Steelers backdrop, so hopefully that works better. It's not much prettier, but it's not the Cardinals. On the off chance that I can get Mike Macdonald to sneak over here after his press conference, I did not want Mike Macdonald to do his show with me if that happens, which it probably won't. But if it did, I couldn't have the Cardinals in the backdrop. I just couldn't do it. So appreciate everybody tuning in. If you haven't given the show a like, click subscribe, please do. We are charging towards 15,000 subscribers. I would love to get there this week and would really appreciate your help in us getting there. So I think we need a couple hundred more subscribers to get to 15K. That would be ideal. So I've only got a little bit of time, maybe a half an hour, to get all of this in before Mike Macdonald speaks, because things went a little haywire today with the schedule. The first players were supposed to speak at 8 a.m., which they did. And as you've been seeing, if you are a YouTube member, you are getting... Today, the videos are going up first. It's just the way things are working. I'm in a mad dash back and forth between interviews and here. But I've been uploading a bunch of player interviews. I've got a bunch more to upload. I have audio as well. That'll go up on patreon.com/hawkblogger. That'll be later today that happens. But things started to just drop off in terms of timing at around 10. When the defensive line group, which is the deepest group, was supposed to speak. Well, 10 came by, 10:15, 10:30, and, Kenneth Grant isn't showing up, JJ Pegues is not showing up, Darius Alexander, no one's there, and there's no updates. So we're just waiting and waiting and waiting. There's still guys that are probably talking. I mean, it literally 90 minutes late. So my plan had been to do this show a while ago. Did not have a chance to do it. I'm going to squeeze it in now because I wanted to cover some different things in this show that I'm going to cover later. And I'll tell you this. What I am probably going to do is I am probably going to leave this show running while I do the Mike Macdonald press conference. On the off chance that he comes back, I don't want to have to set up a whole separate show. That might be the best thing to do, but I gotta, I want to make sure I'm ready if that happens. Worst case scenario, I will come over here and I will update you all on that press conference, and I'll edit out the dead air later, but I'm going to leave this running. So what I wanted to cover in the morning here was the takeaways from yesterday, because John Schneider spoke twice. And for people that are on patreon.com/hawkblogger, you got access to the full interviews. And that's the only place you're going to get access to the full interviews. I don't think they're posted anywhere else. You'll get the podium press conference, but you won't get the off-podium press conference anywhere else. So there are some pretty big takeaways from what we heard yesterday. And I want to go over those with you all in a kind of concise way, so that you're not having to piece things together the way I think a lot of people are having to do. And the first thing that I would bring up is that let's talk about the offensive line, because that's obviously where everyone's focus has been in terms of an issue for the Seahawks, an issue for John Schneider. And one of the things that he said was that I asked him, are you comfortable with having a very young offensive line and counting on a rookie to step in there and be the solution, or do you feel like you need to add some veteran experience? He was very definitive. We need veterans. We need a leader. We need a veteran person in that room. So stow that one away. He then talked about that they just got done building the free agent board, and that it's not awful. That's his exact words. It's not awful there. He was talking about interior offensive line as far as that free agent board. The other thing that kind of came out that was interesting is when asked about the center position, the first person he talked about was Jalen Sundell, not Olu Oluwatimi. And so I don't want to over-rotate on that, but I think Jalen Sundell was a really impressive player as a rookie coming out of North Dakota State, undrafted free agent, played fullback, was the backup tackle at times. He is an athlete. He's an athlete at that position, and I think in a situation where you're talking about playing wide zone, he may be a better fit athletically for the center position. And again, who did he play with last year? Gray Zabel. So these are guys that are a little bit lighter but strong and able to move. So what I take from that is I think Drew Dahlman is a real target for this team. I think they're not gonna spend whatever it takes to bring him in, but I think they're gonna make a real run at Drew Dahlman. There may be other guards that they're looking at, but I wouldn't be surprised if center is the position that they're targeting in free agency, and that they're looking to add another guard in the draft, maybe a guard tackle. And what that would do is it would set up the guard position to basically be a competition with the young guys, and then you'd have a veteran in between young guards. And then you'd have veteran tackles outside those guards. It's hard to believe, but Charles Cross, 4-year veteran, Abe Lucas, 4-year veteran. At this point, they're vets. So I think that's shaping up to be their plan, is to go for a veteran free agent in the middle. And I think Drew Dahlman just makes a ton of sense. He is a wide zone guy. He's a guy that's probably only going to be valuable for certain teams that are running wide zone. And there's only certain teams that are interested in him and can afford him. So I think the Seahawks are going to be a team that's going to probably go heavily after Drew Dahlman. That's one of my big takeaways. The other is what kinds of offensive linemen. John Schneider talked about some differences with this scheme than what they've done in the past. And one of the characteristics they're looking for. How quickly do they fire off the ball? How quickly do they move and get to the edge and get to the outside of the defender to set an edge? As we talked about with Grant Cohen yesterday, a lot of the 49ers runs sometimes were just a fast runner, Raheem Mostert, running 7 yards out of bounds because George Kittle was able to get to the edge, or one of the offensive linemen were able to set an edge and just be able to let the guy basically run in a diagonal straight out of bounds. The Seahawks have not had as many linemen. Anthony Bradford is not that kind of lineman. So I think that's a characteristic to pay attention to. And when you're evaluating even a guy like Tyler Booker, is that who Tyler Booker is? As much as he's maybe the highest floor guard, a lot of people love him. Is that his physical profile? Another characteristic, John Schneider talked about that these need to be guys that are excellent at targeting on the move and adjusting on the move. Think about a linebacker who is trying to tackle a running back and is breaking down in order to make sure that that they're mirroring that movement. They're looking for that in offensive linemen. And so, again, think about which players are good at targeting on the move. Christian Haynes is actually excellent at targeting on the move. That was one of his strengths at UConn, didn't get utilized as much. I think that's going to be really something that could help him tremendously. But the other thing that he said that I was really happy to hear, John Schneider said, you got to be careful with these types of linemen. You don't want to get too light. And the reason he's talking about this weight, like girth, is that too often, if you get too light at that position, they're going to collapse the pocket and you're going to have guys in the quarterback's lap, was what he was talking about. So I was happy to hear that he acknowledged that that's something you got to be accounting for. As you're getting more athletic on the line, you don't want to get too light to where you can't actually create a pocket for your quarterback. And so he gets it. He's saying, I think fans sometimes just want to hear reflected back that he gets it. And I think he's doing that. I think he's doing that pretty well in this regard. So that was kind of the offensive line. Related to the offensive line, I asked him about what are the situations when it makes sense to use a fifth-year option. I won't go into all those details. He went talk about, what the franchise tag is for that position and blah, blah, blah. But what he really was talking about, what was really coming away, I think they're planning to use the fifth-year option on Charles Cross. I reported this as something I expected to happen a month ago. I wrote about it. I think that this is less a cap situation. I think it might be a cash situation. By not doing a extension for Charles Cross this year, he's going to get a big extension because he's a left tackle. He's a young left tackle. By not doing the extension this year, they don't have to do the signing bonus this year. They don't have to have that hit their cash allocation. So you have cash budget. Everyone you're signing to a signing bonus this year likely is going to really cost from your cash budget, given that they've got a lot of guys from that draft class that they're going to want to extend, and they're also going to want to extend Geno Smith, and they're also going to want to extend DK Metcalf. I think cash budget is going to be an issue this year. He's not going to want to talk about it because if he says that, it's going to point the finger at the owners, and he's not going to want to do that. But I think that that's an issue. So I think expect the fifth-year option to be used. It'll be the first time that they've used a fifth-year option. I think that's going to happen with Charles Cross. Next, quarterback. He's in negotiation mode with Geno Smith, so he was not going to give much. But he has, his coaches have been, Mike Macdonald, Clint Kubiak have been pretty clear that they want Geno Smith back. They expect Geno Smith back. And John Schneider probably didn't love that, just in the sense from a leverage perspective, but he said it as well. He thinks Geno Smith's going to be a quarterback. He went on with Chris Sims yesterday, or no, his son. Yeah, Chris Sims. Yeah, that's right. And said the same thing, that he expects Geno to be their quarterback. And at the same time, they're trying to figure out what the right number is. Like, they're in the back and forth. They're in the dance. He's talking to the agent. We'll see how that goes. He'll be back. John did say there's not a deadline. And I think all of us are assuming there is a deadline, because if you want to get the cap space that can create by getting an extension, you want to do that before March 12th. You want to do that before the free agency period starts. So John's going to say there's not a deadline. He says, hey, he's still under contract. Sure. But I think that's disingenuous. I think he absolutely wants to get this done as soon as possible to create that cap space so they can go after people in free agency. So there's that. Ernest Jones. They're obviously talking to his agent. I expect, they'll continue to talk. People are seeming to think that deal might get done before free agency. I think that deal could get done next week if Ernest Jones' agent talks to enough other teams, assesses his market, John Schneider talks to other teams, assesses his market, and they're not too far apart. If they're far apart, then the Seahawks might let him get to free agency and see if there's someone else that really wants to sign him. All I'll say is this. Ernest Jones was very clear when he got to Seattle, he did not want to move his family again. He's got a young kid. He's got a baby at home, moved twice in a year. They are settled in Seattle. I don't think he's left Seattle since he was traded. I think he wants to get that deal done, and I think he's going to pressure his agent to get that deal done. And if it's a matter of a few million, I don't think that's going to be the deal breaker. That's my guess. But I think that could happen as soon as next week would be my best guess about when timing could happen. Could be the week after that. So that's Ernest Jones. DK Metcalf, every single time it's come up, John Schneider's made it very clear. There's nothing to happen with DK Metcalf. He's going to be a Seahawk. I can't tell you how many coaches I heard yesterday say, we're in the business of keeping good players. We're not looking, we want to be a good team, and you need good players to be a good team. Over and over and over again. Very much coach speak. I don't think you've heard the way Mike Macdonald talks about DK Metcalf, the way Clint Kubiak. There's no one in that coaching staff that is looking to move on from DK Metcalf. This is a team that lacks difference-making athletes, to be totally frank. They have guys that are not super outlier athletes. That's just been the way the Seahawks have been, and they're trying to accumulate more. DK Metcalf is one of them. He's not going anywhere. So I don't think that's real news, but that was clear again yesterday. Tyler Lockett, honestly, I love Tyler Lockett. I know people are asking about it. I wouldn't even be asking about it because it matters from an emotional standpoint. It doesn't matter from a football standpoint. Tyler Lockett will probably not be back. He may go and play for another team. It happens, whatever. Jerry Rice played for the Seahawks. Whatever, it happens. So I love Tyler Lockett. I wish him well. I don't know that he's going to be back. Maybe he will. John Schneider is very complimentary. He said he's one of his favorite players ever. And I totally understand that. But I don't think it's really important enough to spend a lot of time talking about. So I'm not. The other thing that was, I think, an important takeaway from the session with John Schneider was I asked him, I posed the question, I said, everyone's talking to you about your offensive line. Everybody's talking to you about your offensive line. Your defensive line's pretty good. But you look at the world champs, the Eagles, and they actually just keep adding to a position of strength. And he's like, I know. And then I asked him, that was not the question, that was a statement. And then I asked him, do you feel like you want to take from this very deep defensive tackle draft where there's a lot of value and a lot of talent, or do you feel like you might need to push up need to address a gap on the offensive line? And I loved his answer. He's like, our biggest mistakes have been when we pushed up players for need. And this is something he said before. I wanted to hear it again, specifically this year, because there is so much pressure to use every aspect of player acquisition to buttress, whatever that word is, to strengthen the offensive line. And I think that a big mistake they could make is reaching for an offensive lineman at 18 that they shouldn't, and that they'll pass on a difference-making defensive player or a tight end or something like that. So I loved that he said that. I love that he acknowledged it, and we'll find out. We'll find out how he approaches that, in a couple of months when the draft comes. But it was good to hear that from John Schneider. So I thought John said mostly the right things yesterday. I don't think he always puts them together in a coherent, crisp way, but generally it feels like the offseason plan is coming together in a logical way. Yes, they need a veteran offensive lineman. Yes, they see some options for that on the interior offensive line in free agency. Yes, that they want to have a great center. Yes, that they're focused on outside zone. They know what kinds and characteristics of players they're looking for in that regard. They've got a ton of coaches to coach that scheme. They've coached that scheme for decades. They know it well. They know each other. I think there's a lot of evidence that they're doing a bunch of things to improve what was really a big weakness, the offensive line and the run game. I think the other piece here is that all this conversation about Geno Smith, DK Metcalf is for naught. They're both going to be back, and they're probably both going to be extended. So I think those are probably the biggest things. The other thing I would say, I don't know if I mentioned this before. I think I did not. Is that he did mention that he hopes a quarterback falls to them in the draft. Basically, he said, I hope the draft board speaks to us and allows us to draft a quarterback, because it just hasn't worked so far. That was pretty interesting, and it was very heartfelt. I think it bothers him that he has not drafted a quarterback since Alex Magoo in the 7th round, and his only other quarterback he's ever drafted is Russell Wilson in the 3rd round. He was asked about Sam Howell, and his answer was pretty wishy-washy. It was like, I want to see Sam in this new system with the bootlegs and what Kubiak could do. That was not, Sam's our guy, he's our backup, he's our future. It was, I want to see. That's a big difference. So you combine those two statements, I hope a quarterback falls to us in the draft, and I want to see Sam in this new system. Sam Howell's he's just on the roster. He is not entrenched in any way. So it'll be interesting, talking to, figuring out which quarterbacks they might target. I think Jackson Dart. I heard some interesting things today. I'll post the JJ Pegues, who played at Ole Miss. His answer to my questions about Jackson Dart was pretty interesting. But I think Jackson Dart I don't like it. I still think Quinn Ewers is, for some reason, someone that John Schneider likes. I am not a fan. I was talking to Ryan Fowler yesterday. He is not a fan. I really hope that's not the pick. That'll be a hard one to stomach. Like, keep in mind, John Schneider's made some pretty good moves at the quarterback position. He wanted Josh Allen. He wanted to trade for Patrick Mahomes in the draft. He drafted Russell Wilson. But he's also made some really not so good moves. He traded for Charlie Whitehurst. Tavares Jackson was fine, RIP, but like not great. Matt Flynn was a signing, not great. Drew Lock was a guy that he targeted, not great. And then Sam Howell, I think, has not been great. So mixed bag at the quarterback position, and so I'm not super trusting of him targeting the right guy. At least with Jackson Dart, I think that he's a guy that his teammates will rally around, and he's got I think he's got a better skill set mix than someone like Quinn Ewers, who is really much more of just a thrower, and I think has some real mechanical issues that would give me some pause with him. So those are the big things. Let me just check chat, see if there's anything going on there that I need to attend to. It would have been funny if you guys said you couldn't hear me and I just was drowning on this whole time. PGZ206, thank you for gifting 5 Hawkblogger memberships. I really appreciate it, man. You've always been generous, and it's a great time to become a member. It's a great time to actually upgrade your membership, because all of these videos, these player interviews I'm posting, you have to be club level or higher to get access to those before they become public for everybody. So great time to upgrade your membership, and if you started as a free member, it's even cheaper because now you can upgrade from that. So thank you for PGZ doing that. The other piece that came out yesterday, not a huge news story, but Jason Peters has been a titan of a man in the NFL for many years. Great left tackle, probably a Hall of Famer, and he retired. I think that kind of got forced, because I don't think John was necessarily meaning to break that news in his press conference, but he did. And Jason Peters is not going to be a coach. He is going to be he's going to work with Mo Kelly, who does like player development stuff. Basically like a mentor, someone who gets with the players and probably is like a liaison to the coaching staff and tries to create the right culture and environment. And the thing I wanted to tell you guys, like, you remember Jason Peters was signed to the practice squad last year, and I was like, this guy cannot enter a game. Like, he's not ready to play a football game. But there was a really big difference in the locker room once he came in. Before Jason Peters was in the locker room, a lot of times Geno Smith was the one playing the music in his locker, which is fine, and it was a relatively subdued locker room. I mean, nothing odd, but just kind of everyone doing their thing and talking, whatever. Once Jason Peters came in, the center of gravity shifted. A lot of people would hang around his locker, defensive linemen, defensive players in general. They have this big shuffleboard. I don't know if you call it what you call it when you got the little pucks that you push, but one of those tables in the locker room. It hadn't been touched until Jason Peters came. Every single time I went in that locker room after he arrived, he was playing with somebody else was playing. They're hanging around, they're just talking. And so it was really palpable, the difference in the atmosphere in that locker room after he was signed as a practice squad guy. And I think that's why they decided, like, this guy needs to be around. I think he made a big difference in how they came together. You got a lot of young players on that roster, and I think Jason Peters is a guy that, by the way, like I said, the defensive guys, even though he's an offensive lineman, he's kind of situated, at least in locker room, he was situated kind of in the defensive corner. So, he's hanging out with the other big fellas a lot. But given how young this offensive line is, I think that's also a smart move for the Seahawks to keep him around. All right, so I think that those are the big things. The other pieces that I guess I'll speak to, I will have for you guys more interviews for players. there were some guys that were really impressive. Oluwafemi Oladejo from UCLA really stood out. Demetrius Knight really stood out. I thought Jordan Phillips, the defensive tackle from Maryland, stood out. JJ Pegues, I already loved that guy, so that made it easy, but he stood out. And I asked a few of them. For some reason, it's taboo here to ask, like, other media members look down on you if you ask whether they have met with team X, Y, or Z. For me, that's kind of important information, so I asked anyway for a few of them. I don't care if other people were pissed about it, but other people were asking too. But a lot of the guys had not met with the Seahawks. So you'll hear from me. I'll go back and catalog which of them had. As I said, I will also post some audio. A little bit hectic. And the funny thing is I'm plugging audio into things that I'm not there for, and it's going between podium visits. So it might be like 10 o'clock, podium 8 is Shamar Stewart, and then 10:20, podium 8 is Jalen Walker or whatever. I'm not positive who I got on those interview clips. So, and there's no way to label it. So hopefully we'll figure that out. But I'll get that posted for you. It might even be tonight. We'll see, like, depending on how the rest of the afternoon goes. I'll get that posted. I got a bunch of video to be posted. And then I got the Mike Macdonald thing. So here's what we're going to do. I am going to leave. I'm going to leave this running for now. A little questioning that because it could be running for like an hour. Let's do this. We'll close shop here. I will pre-set up a next stream on the off chance that we get Mike Macdonald over here sometime after his session. And I'll probably set the time for that about an hour from now. And if I go live earlier, great. So I'll get that set up, and then I'm going to head over and talk to Mike Macdonald. All right, everybody. Thank you for the support. Give the show a like, click subscribe, and I will see you all very soon. Take care.